We are gathered today to have our February digital government update call. We'll do our regular update on what's going on in the world of digital government in the BC government, and then we'll launch into a really great discussion around skills and digital skills for providing great services. On your screen, you should see a slide that provides a bit of a reminder on the digital framework. A couple of big updates. On the digital inside side of things, we have a wonderful announcement. The GCIO just last week announced that we've improved access to cloud-based tools. Cloud-based compute and storage are really critical for modern digital services. So our OCIO has been working with the Government of Canada, with Shared Services Canada, and the province has successfully onboarded to the federal government's cloud brokerage. We can now use Government of Canada Protected B level compute and storage, which aligns with our own privacy and security requirements. The first service order that we've put through this new arrangement is with Amazon Web Services, so really good progress there. We're piloting things with two teams, one out of the Ministry of Health and one out of the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation. There's lots of great progress happening on data ethics. So some of you have heard me in the past talk about the importance of ethical AI, artificial intelligence, and the ethical use of data and data-driven technologies. This is really important in the public sector, and it seems like there's a bit of a policy gap often, particularly at the subnational level. So this is something that we've been making good progress on. And the team over in CERMO is working on a first draft of principles for data ethics. So wonderful progress there. And finally, I wanted to flag that there's been some good progress on common components. There was an excellent conversation at the Digital Investment Board a couple of weeks ago to really look at how we can improve governance and trying to build out that coherence that we're all looking for across government and our digital footprint. And we will be really looking to take a community-driven approach to this. So if there are teams that have interests or have experience working with common components, please get in touch. I'm thrilled that we have three great panelists joining for the conversation on digital skills and digital talent. I'm going to open it up to you with a first question, and that is, why are digital skills important for the public sector in providing modern services? So Derek, let's start with you. Why do digital skills matter?
Well, great to be here, Jaimie. So I think the way we talk about this is that digital and data are core competencies and components of a modern government. So they're kind of essential to the way that we work right now. We also talk about the need to retain and recruit talent in order to tackle the challenges. And folks have mentioned leadership. We want leadership that understands and kind of leverage these skills. And I think fundamentally the way that we're approaching this in the Academy is that learning is kind of a key component of how we deliver services in the modern age.
Liz, at a national level, can you reflect on why do digital skills matter?
Yeah, this is a fabulous question. So digital skills are all about the behaviors that are required to design and deliver services in a modern way. And I sort of wish that we had used the word modern rather than digital, because people think digital, they think technology. But what is a modern way? It's one in which our services meet our constituents' expectations, right? So I think we're good on that. Long gone are the days where we'd stand up a service and we walk away and come back 5-10 years later to see how it's working. Citizens now, and us as well as citizens, we expect that our services are first and foremost designed with users and then iterated and improved frequently to adapt to growing and evolving needs. So this is a whole new way of working in the public service. This is not how we were taught. This is not how the public service has always worked. And hence the need for digital skills that enable us to work in a manner to design and deliver these modern services. But it gets worse. So although we're not AWS, we're not Amazon Web Services, our citizens don't care. They still have the right, and rightly so, to expect awesome services from us. And what's at risk if we don't modernize our services to meet those expectations? There's two things, trust and relevancy, the two things most important in the public sector. So therefore, digital skills are imperative for the public sector in order to maintain trust and relevancy with our constituents.
Those are powerful words. That trust angle is so important. Stefan, you've been doing this work at a global scale. Why do digital skills matter?
Great, thanks, Jaimie, and pleasure to be with all of you. And indeed, at GovLab, our mission is to look into how do we transform the way we govern, i.e. make decisions, design public services, solve public problems, in a way that provides both improved efficacy and also improved legitimacy. And so digital provides the opportunity to really improve the way we design services in a more effective way, but also a more legitimate way across the whole life cycle of designing decisions and designing public services, whether it's about identifying the needs and triaging who has the most needs with regard to particular kind of services, to communicating with constituencies in new and effective ways, to ultimately ideation and experimentation so that we actually know what works before we go big, for instance, to ultimately also monitoring and evaluating what works and what does not work. And so digital has a role to play across all those stages of designing services, solving public problems, and improving the way we make decisions. And the unique feature of digital is that it does not only make us more effective, but it can also provide us more legitimate because there is an extra level of accountability and transparency associated with it. And so being more effective, being more legitimate and innovative, that's what digital is all about.
I love that. And I just love the GovLab's mandate. This idea of transforming the public sector for public good is just so inspiring and certainly resonates with, I think, many of us who have chosen to join the public sector. So thank you for your leadership there. Derek, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. I'm really keen to understand, what are we trying to do with this digital academy here in BC? I know many of us were very keen to see it get stood up. So here you are, you're in your role. What are you trying to achieve?
Establish an enterprise approach to learning and capacity building to support the great work that your team is doing. You know, the digital framework and the application of the digital principles. But I think we're also there to bring kind of coherence to the digital and data learning space. We're really wanting to engage people because learning isn't kind of a one-way street. It's not about pushing, it's actually engaging people in this challenge. And I think the other piece that I'm really interested in is how do we modernize our learning within government? How do we provide kind of the support so that learning is actually something that's easy to do and that we engage our 34,000 employees in it easily.
So no pressure. You only have to educate 34,000 people, eh? So Liz, you've been at this for a while with the Canada School. What works? What are the training offerings that are most popular? Like, what has really been the highest impact kind of interventions that you've seen?
Yeah, so the Digital Academy is a branch within the Canada School of Public Service, and we're operate a little bit differently than the rest. We love collaborating, which is, this is not going to sound great, but it's not the norm for the school. Normally, in a traditional format, the school would develop and launch it to our constituents. However, in the academy, recognizing the importance of collaborating broadly, we've pulled in jurisdictions from all over the place in the design of our most popular products. We were only stood up 2 years ago and had put in place one classroom offering before COVID hit, although we were testing a few since then. And since April 1st, we've put out a whole suite of discovered digital products under various different streams. We've got a data focus, we've got an executive focus, and we've got some basic practitioner courses as well. But I want to tell you that they all cover certain basic content, because we felt that all our constituents required a couple of things. Number one, we talk about what the heck is digital? Because as I mentioned previously, everybody wants to know what that means, and it means something a little bit to everybody, and we want it to be a common term that everybody feels comfortable using. Then what we jump into usually is a discussion around digital standards, and the federal government has 10 digital standards, provinces have their own, they all line up really nicely. And we talk about how these are really behaviors on how they should be acting, and they're not necessarily technology driven. And we have two base courses that are our biggest sellers right now. They're all micro-learnings. They're all packaged in ways that they're self-directed learning and then facilitated discussions, virtually obviously, where we bring folks together for more focused on what they're doing. And there's a balance between the course it's for the doers, so the core of our public service, and then the course for the taskers, so those executives, which are the most challenging to get into the classroom. But the tipping point at which we know that we're going to have done well is when we have the right number of doers and taskers that are speaking that same language. And I also want to point out that we do have also a hybrid platform called busrides.ca, which is not closed like the rest of the school's normal platforms. We do give away our content to whoever wants it, but busrides.ca are micro-learnings that you can share with your teams at any time, watch them, listen to them, have discussions with your teams.
I love what you just said around taking that ecosystem approach and not just having the doers, but the taskers also involved. That's fantastic. Stefaan, the next question is for you. My first really intimate engagement with the GovLab was through the Organization of American States Fellowship for Open Government in the Americas. And I remember going through some of your learning programs and doing theories of change and really hands-on learning. So I'm curious, what are your lessons from educating public servants and public innovators for over the years? What works?
Great question, and I presume I have half an hour to answer that. So I will focus on just a few highlights and a few key lessons that we've learned over the last 8 years or so. And I think the first one is that it's really important, in order to have a right training culture, to have the permission to learn and the permission to apply what one learns. I mean, too often we see that learning is becoming a burden, or one learns something and then one cannot apply it. And so having that kind of permission to actually innovate and learn, I think, is a key element for success. The second, I think, key learning, and I will go quickly, Jaimie, because I don't want to make nervous here, but the second key element is that we really need to provide skills and methods that enables people to go from idea to implementation. And we call this to make people more like public entrepreneurs, so that they really can think about what is the problem, how do we actually formulate the questions that can be answered through, for instance, digital, and how do we then go about actually implementing that. The third one is that we need to complement training with coaching, because you can only train so much without actually having the contextual needs that one might have. And so train plus coaching turns out to be the most impactful kind of interventions. It's also very important to develop a portfolio of skills, not just one quantitative or qualitative skills. Actually, you need both. And so that's why we quite often train people around data, but then at the same time around human-centric design, for instance, because you do need to have those both qualitative and quantitative kind of skills. Fifth, it's very important to do peer-to-peer learning, because quite often the most learning happens from your peers, because you already have that level of understanding on what it takes to actually fulfill your job. And so peer-to-peer learning is equally very important. And lastly, and that's why I'm delighted that you're using Slido today, is to actually be data-driven, i.e. understanding what are the needs that one has previously learned, but also who knows what in the organization. And so understanding who needs what and who knows what, and then finding a way to match those two is a really important lesson that we've learned in order to actually scale the impact that training and upskilling can have in this space.
That's wonderful. And I love that you started with that idea of having permission to go and learn. Liz, I'm going to go to you. I know that the Government of Canada is investing in digital change much more broadly beyond digital skills. So the April 2020 new policy on service and digital, lots of investments like that. How do these skills development initiatives fit into the broader efforts to embrace digital change?
Okay, that's a great question, because it is just one piece of a great big huge framework. So the Government of Canada has a digital dream, and it's big, but in my humble opinion, it's really well fleshed out and has been underway for a few years now. So first of all, we have a Minister of Digital. And that in itself was a massive step. And the mandate of that Minister of Digital has changed significantly since we had the first one. We're on our fourth now. And the first was Minister Scott Bryson. And a really fabulous video is you can find it on YouTube, is A Crisis of Confidence, which really lays out the burning platform that we're talking about here. And when Minister Bryson became the Minister of Digital, he had that along with another portfolio. But now we've evolved that role to now the Minister of Digital, Minister Murray, that's all she does. She is just the Minister of Digital, plus she owns Shared Services Canada. So her mandate has grown from a digital perspective. So that's absolutely key. Part of that was implementing as well the position of the CIO of the Government of Canada. We always had that role, but it wasn't at a deputy level. So now it's a deputy level position, same as we have in the finance community and in the HR community, giving it the level of importance of its criticality. And then, as Jaimie mentioned, we have some policy. We put in place a really fabulous policy on service and digital, which is a meshing of policy related to information technology and information management and service, and basically says you can't do service without digital. The two go hand in hand. And that's a whole policy suite. We stood up the Canadian Digital Service, and that's the organization that goes in and helps departments with their really big digital needs, and they go in as a multidisciplinary team and create. We have the digital standards that I talked about, and we have various other governance with regards to enterprise architecture and project and financial management. And then we add on top of that the learning and the upskilling piece that comes with the Digital Academy. And altogether, that's the Government of Canada digital vision.
That's fantastic and very inspiring. So, Stefaan, back to you. And I know from my experience with the GovLab that you very much emphasize experiential learning. Can you tell us a little bit about the theory there? Why do you do that? What are the benefits?
Yeah, no, experiential learning, we approach from three perspectives. One is indeed learning by doing, where you actually enable individuals who are part of our courses to actually, as I said, go from idea to implementation, to really understand what does it take to actually implement digital in the areas and the context in which they are tasked to improve or which they care about. And so that's one. The second element of experiential learning, which, by the way, goes quite often hand in hand with the first one, is to also know who has experience, so that you not only learn by doing, but you also start to learn who to ask in order to become better. And I think that's a second, quite often misunderstood or not a well-developed experiential learning, so that you actually know who can you learn from. And that's why we always make sure that we are engaging with practitioners. And then the last one of experiential learning is to actually put yourself in the user and the seat of the user. So you also have user experience in order to really, for instance, define and design the service to the user in a much better way. And so that's, I think, how we approach experiential learning from those three angles.
Fantastic. Next question, I'm going to go to Derek, and this is a bit of a tough one. This is an audience question. People are asking about, okay, so that's great that you've got all these digital initiatives, but we do need to have the broader sort of change management. We have to have executive buy-in. So what's your plan for getting some of those senior executives into the classroom? And like, what can we really expect from the Digital Academy in BC?
Is like one of the things that we've got on our docket right now is standing up an initial training for leadership within the BC Public Service and working with the ADM level about kind of the why and the how. And we're really interested in folks that are actually, they've got this challenge, and how can we support them in that challenge? So both learning what their needs are, but also imparting some wisdom and some approaches to them. And we're hoping to, we're planning on doing that in March. So that's kind of first on our thing. So leadership, we've heard, is really important. But we're also doing kind of a needs assessment. We're meeting with what we're calling our representative group to understand what their needs are, and kind of mapping that out, and then starting to deliver some trainings that were happening in the lab and other places. And then what I'm really keen on is actually pursuing platforms that allow us to deliver this training and other trainings more effectively, whether it's a learning management system, whether it's a system that allows us to do this kind of matchmaking so that people can have kind of experiential opportunities. They can do that training. We can leverage temporary assignments and the like. We have people so that they're building their competencies where we need them within government. So
That's wonderful, and a great segue into another participant question for Liz. Lots of comments on the Slido around wanting to access some of the resources that you've referenced. And so there's a specific question here around, are you going to open up all your training? Can we take federal courses?
I wish I had the answer that you want for that, but I don't. So we have a legislation that dictates the scope around which the Canada School delivers offerings, and it doesn't even cover all federal departments and agencies. And it was kind of a complicated, kludgy history of as to how we were formed and then how we got our funding. So there is no immediate plan to open up our courses. However, there is good news. So as I mentioned, we've got busrides.ca where we share a lot of our micro-learnings, but as well, we're in the process of implementing a number of new learning-related platforms in the school, and one of them is an open learning platform through which we'll be able to share our content. And prior to that being stood up, we're in a position right now, for example, with the gang in BC and federal other jurisdictions where we share the content. For example, I delivered one of my offerings to a team in the Ontario Public Service, and they slightly customized the content so it fit their mandate and fit their policy suite and their digital service standards. And now they've got a trainer that's delivering it internally. So there's lots of different ways that we can share until we have a formal platform.
Just to close, we're almost at a time. I want to do one rapid fire round, 10, 15 seconds each. If there's public servants on the call today that want to improve their digital skills, what's one thing that they can do today? So Liz, let's go Derek, Liz, and then Stefan. Go ahead, Derek.
I was just going to say, be curious and courageous. Try things out. For myself, I didn't consider myself to be digital, but here I am. So,
excellent.
Push yourself.
Be curious. Great. Liz?
Okay, this is the one that I use to drive myself. So in everything that you do, whether it's writing a briefing note, organizing all staff, reviewing a process, building a service, anything that you do, start small, ask for feedback from clients, that's your end users, shift, adapt, and build, and then rinse and repeat. It's just over and over again. Keep on doing it.
Love that agile mentality for sure. Stefan?
I would say focus on the question that you seek to answer and formulate the question before you dive into the solution. And I think too often we assume that we have the solution without really understanding the problem and the questions that we need to focus on. And I think it helps if you know what you are seeking to solve.
So start with why. I love that. Thank you to the three of you so much for sharing your time, your lessons, your wisdom. We very much appreciate it. On behalf of the BC public servants that were on the call today, thank you. And thank you to everybody for participating on the call today. It's a lot of fun to hear your views and to try to build our community and our ecosystem of change makers, of people who are really committed to delivering great services to the people of BC. So thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.